Uhuru comrades, brothers and sisters, I want to welcome everybody again to Uhuru Congo, new YouTube channel that we have created, especially for this urgent moment in history where African people are on the move all over the continent of Africa and other places around the world, but specifically it is important for us to talk about the Congo, where you see so many of the contradictions of imperialism concentrated, and they have been in so many years. We've seen the Congo being the center of the resistance of our people. I just spoke at Oxford University, invited by the Oxford Union, and that was on January 24th, and that was something like 55 years after the appearance of Malcolm X. I think it's really striking that Malcolm X was there 55 years ago, and he was talking about what was happening in Congo and how Congo was under attack. And it's a real profound statement about what is happening to our people and the history of what has been happening to our people. And of course, 55 years ago, when Malcolm X was referencing Congo, he was talking about the consequence of the imperialist powers of the world. And you must understand that it was not just the Belgians who participated in this, or the French or the US, but they used this European-based created parliament that's called the United Nations to participate also in the attack that was made on Congo as represented by the attack on Patrice Lumumba, who had become the first democratically elected president or prime minister of Congo following the overturn, at least temporarily, nominally, of Belgian imperialism. So we're talking about a time where the US used slander against our people in Congo, claiming that we were in Congo killing white nuns and missionaries, etc., as the basis for justifying the attack on Congo. And since that time, there has not been anything remotely resembling an attempt for our people in Congo to achieve what is due us. And part of what was significant about Congo under Patrice Lumumba is the fact that he was working with tried to work with Dr. Kwame Nkrumah of Ghana and other forces who wanted to really build a movement to unite African people everywhere for the liberation of our people. It is worth noting that Patrice Lumumba did attend the first conference of all African people that happened in Accra, Ghana in April of 1958. And he was influenced incredibly by that conference and by the notion that we first of all should seek independence right away, and secondly that Africa as a continent had to be united. And then he was killed, and Malcolm X was speaking about that in 1964, some 2 years after the murder of Patrice Lumumba. The issue of Congo was still alive. It is still alive today. The imperialists are looting Congo just like they are the rest of Africa. And just like yesterday, when the imperialists were able to use Mobutu and Kasuvubu and other people there in Congo, African petty bourgeois forces, African neo-colonial forces, to kill Patrice Lumumba, we see that today the imperialist powers are able to do the same thing using sectors of the African population, the African petty bourgeoisie, to cover for imperialism. And so in December 30th, I think it was, there was an election in Congo, and the people were extraordinarily enthusiastic about being able to participate in the election because of the hatred of Joseph Kabila, who presided over the looting of Congo, who presided collaborating with other neo-colonial forces and imperialism proper in oppressing our people, starving African people, And so people, in the absence of having the African People's Socialist Party there on the ground in Congo, are looking for some alternative, some way to relieve the pain. And so the elections seemed to be the way out. And of course, like in any country that's dominated by imperialism, what is most available for participation in these elections are sectors of the African petty bourgeoisie or the bourgeoisie itself. So even though it's supposed to be an election to pick a new leader, whatever leader would have been chosen would have been representing one sector or another of imperialist white power. But people enthusiastically came out. One thing people knew is they did not want Joseph Kabila. And they, people, hundreds and thousands of people stood in lines all over in Congo waiting to participate in the vote. You know, there was so much treachery involved in that the people became extremely disgusted. It was clear that the government was making every effort to make sure that there was not a genuine good participation by the people in this. They actually quarantined certain sections of Congo, claiming that Ebola had invaded, and so they couldn't vote and count votes there. They had various kinds of machines set up, voting machines for the first time, and they claimed that some of the voting machines didn't work. I think more than 11,000 people had their votes not counted. It was just an incredible mess, an intentional mess that was created by Kabila. Nevertheless, what became clear, the Catholic Church has been in the forefront of some kind of struggle for a kind of democratic change in Congo. Of course, when you have liberals fighting for democracy in situations like this, it's an attempt to protect the system. Otherwise, if you don't let the people vote for a neo-colonial puppet, the people will overturn the whole damn system and put somebody in there that you don't want. So you had like the Catholic Church playing a major role in criticizing Kabila, and they had 40,000 poll watchers stretched across the Congo who participated in counting votes. And so they knew who had won the election even before the official tally was given. And this, you must remember, is that the actual election happened 2 years after the mandate of the Kabila was over. He postponed having the election. He had attempted to set up a situation where the Constitution could be changed so he could run for office again, to no avail because of the anger of the people on the ground in Congo. So finally this election did happen, and then they waited an unseasonably long time before they would even announce who had won the election, because they had to go back and rig it to make sure that the outcome was something that they wanted. Kabila had put forth his own candidate. I think his name was Kamara, something like that. And the people rejected this guy overwhelmingly. There was another person, there were several other people who participated in the election. The Catholic Church had actually said who had won the election, and all the polling indicate that Kabila's force had lost the election. And the outcome, of course, was that they shut down the internet to make sure that nobody outside of the country could know what the hell was going on. And then they picked their own person as the new president of Congo. And the struggle continues there. The crisis continues there. And so we want to keep talking about this, because one of the weaknesses of our movement overall is the fact that we have been isolated from each other. Information about what's happening in one part of the African world is kept from the rest of the African world. There's no meaningful coverage of Congo, meaningful coverage, I should say, of Congo and the elections there. So we have initiated this process through Uhuru Congo to bring the people, African people and others around the world, a better understanding of the situation in Congo, because we have to make sure that it's understood that Congo is part of the African Revolution. It is what many people have referred to as the heart of Africa, based on its location, where it is located geographically on the continent of Africa. Also, the tremendous amount of wealth, resources that can be found, mineral resources in Congo. And Congo has a legacy that is incredible. Of course, many people may know that Leopold of King Leopold from Belgium, participated in a huge massacre of our people, leaving 10 to 15 million Africans in Congo killed by the Belgians. And they called it the Congo Free State under Belgium. That was something that was given to Belgium by white people, white power, in 1884-85 at this Berlin conference. And Belgium, by the way, Congo is 80 times larger than Belgium. And so here, all of these white folk and the Belgians and the whole imperialist system benefiting from the rape and plunder of Africa, with Congo being critical to it. And I want to talk to, we have on the phone with us, Congo-born Comrade Secretary General of the African Socialist International, Luwezi Kinshasa. As I said, he's born in Congo, he's lived in exile in Europe for a while. He's the Secretary General of the African Socialist International. He has the responsibility not only fighting to deal with our situation in Congo, and he's on the case doing various kinds of radio shows on a regular basis, communicating with Africans from Congo throughout the world, but his responsibility is also to organize African people throughout the African continent and other places. He traveled with me to South Africa in April, where we have the party organized on the ground there. And we were just in Oxford on January 24th, and we did an event on January 26th in London, England, that was attended by Africans who live in London and who come from various places around the African world, and Africans who live currently in France. So Comrade Luwezi Kinshasa is going to go ahead and introduce this discussion and take it from here, Luwezi.
Uhuru, Chairman, thank you for the overview. Basically, we are now almost a week since Tshisekedi has been sworn in as the president.
Who was sworn in? I think we didn't name the person who was sworn in as president.
Felix Tshisekedi, the candidate of
Tshisekedi, yes.
The candidate of the alliance known as CASH, and which basically means Cap for Change. And this alliance is made of UDPS. UDPS is the oldest neo-colonial organization in the Congo. It was born in opposition to Mobutu's rule, basically. And the founder, at least the co-founder of the UDPS, is Etienne Tshisekedi. Etienne Tshisekedi died almost 2 years ago. He died on the 1st February 2 years ago. His body is still in Belgium. It's not buried yet. And Etienne Tshisekedi himself was a senior minister in Mobutu's government. It's really important to understand the itinerary of a UDPS, to understand Felix Tshisekedi today. When Mobutu made his coup, the first coup, in September 1960, and they overthrew, the CIA and the Belgian were able to overthrow Lumumba's government. The government that was put in place, it was made of students. Under Mobutu's leadership. Mobutu was a colonel appointed in the army by Lumumba. And that Etienne Tshisekedi, father of Felix Tshisekedi, was a deputy minister of justice in that government. So it's quite really important to understand that the UDPS, the organization that came to power, is a result of collaboration in the counterinsurgency, basically in the Congo, that began when Lumumba was overthrown. As I said, Etienne Tshisekedi was a deputy minister of justice in a government that was put in place by imperialists after overthrowing Lumumba's government. And secondly, after it became clear that Mobutu was no longer capable to guarantee the control of the masses, because that's why Mobutu was put in power, to squash, to crush basically the revolution that was developing in the Congo between 1959 and 1965. Revolution of which Che Guevara was a part of as he came to Congo in 1965. Mm-hmm. So that was Mobutu's job. And they succeeded, of course, in killing Lumumba, also killing the leaders of the revolution, people like Pierre Amolele. And when Mobutu came to power in 1965, in his second school, that's where the revolution was already crushed by the intervention of the Belgian army, backed by the U.S. Army. I mean, the U.S. provided the weapons, the airplanes to crush the revolution in the Congo in 1964. So that's how Mobutu came to power. Not because he was chosen, but as a result of the defeat of the revolution, Mobutu came to power like that. So between 64 and 1980, let's say 64 and 1977, it became clear that after the invasion of Congo by or an attack on the Congo by former refugees from Congo living in Angola, supported by the MPLA, the governments in place in Angola in 1977, it became clear that Mobutu was no longer able to control Congo, to control the masses of Congo, because in the context of Cold War, he couldn't guarantee that he will keep Congo on the side of the U.S. and the white power as such. And there was another attack in 1978 from Angola as well, by the same group, the armed groups known as the FNLC, the Front National of Liberation of Congo. And Mobutu lost as well, and he was rescued by the U.S. and the Belgian, the French, and Moroccan troops. There was a division of labor. The U.S. supplied weaponry as well, the logistics. So from that time, the United States decided they need to create a new organization that can control the masses and also provide a new colonial alternative to Mobutu's rule. And that's how, in 1982, officially, UDPS was launched, a Union for Progress and Social Democracy, under the leadership of various leaders or former leaders of Mobutu's regime. Tshisekedi was one, Liao, Kipasa, and others, about 12 of them. But Tshisekedi emerged as the main leader after many years of being arrested by Mobutu, but never killed, because the real opponents of Mobutu were killed. And neo-colonial opponents of Mobutu like Tshisekedi were locked up but not killed, not murdered. So throughout the years, Etienne Tshisekedi and his organization emerged as the main alternative to Mobutu, until in 1996, when the United States decided to use the Rwandan new government that came on the back of the war in Rwanda and the genocide in Rwanda to overthrow Mobutu regime. And that's how Tshisekedi didn't go to power. The U.S. put somebody else. That was Laurent Désiré Kabila. In 1997, Mobutu's regime was overthrown. And between 1997 and 1998, Kabila regime didn't agree with U.S. imperialism on a certain point. So they decided to overthrow him. And they killed him in 2001 and imposed his son, Joseph Kabila. So to fast forward, basically, Joseph Kabila has been in power for 17 years. He won 2 elections that people did say he didn't win it, but he stayed there after the first election in 2006 and then another election in 2011. So the struggle in Congo was now Kabila should not represent himself for a new mandate. It should go according to the constitution. So Joseph Kabila tried to change the constitution, but there was a massive opposition to that. The African workers paid a heavy price to prevent him from going for a third mandate. So it didn't happen. Finally, organized elections. As the chairman already said, it was a chaotic organization election. Really chaotic. About half the population did not even vote. And then instead of declaring the real winner, according to the Catholic Church, who had 40,000 observers and things like that, Joseph Kabila, from all the news that are coming out, made a deal with Felix Tshisekedi that since the candidate of Kabila lost badly, his name is Shadari, Ramazani Shadari, lost terribly, he will share power with Felix Tshisekedi if Felix accepts to be a president. That is what the deal is, and that's what most of the people who are opposed to Tshisekedi and Joseph Kabila are reporting. That's what the Imperial is saying, that the winner of the election was Martin Fayulu. So Fayulu did not win the elections, according to Joseph Kabila. It's Felix Tshisekedi. That's one. And worse than that, when there is a new president, when there is a new elections, usually the one who wins the presidency wins also their national parliament election. Surprise, surprise, in the Congo, Felix Tshisekedi is declared the winner, as some people say, even appointed the winner of the elections, but he did not win the national election. He lost badly the elections about the parliament. Kabila's alliance, known as the FCC, Congolese Common Congolese Front, won the national elections for the parliament by a large majority. It's unbelievable that this hated regime, no one wants this regime, but they won the majority in the parliament, the national parliament. And worse, in the provincial parliament, because they have a national parliament, and also each province has its own parliament as well. Kabila's alliance also won that as well. So, Tshisekedi is the president, but he has no majority in the parliament, or the prime minister must come from the majority, from the group that has the majority in the parliament. So the prime minister will come from Kabila's alliance. We don't know yet who's coming the prime minister, and that's one part of the crisis for Etienne Tshisekedi himself, because on his side, inside his camp, they're saying, but you are the president, but you have no majority. How will you govern? And the other side of the issue is Martin Fayulu said he would not allow anybody to win his victory. So he's going to continue to resist, what's the word, peacefully. So yesterday, he organized a rally, and that was a successful rally in terms of attendance. It was a massive rally, because the criticism of Martin Fayulu was that you had no base compared to UDPS. But what we begin to see is a transformation, that the base of UDPS is going to be eroded, and that Fayulu is going to attract more people on his side. Because for those who don't accept the alliance, the compromise between Felix and Kabila, will probably turn at the moment on the side of Martin Fayulu. So this is basically the situation as it is in Congo today. People are waiting to see the full government, who's going to be the prime minister. They want to see if Felix Tshisekedi will really be the real president or not, or Kabila will continue to pull the strings, since he still has control of the army. And de facto, by being the president of Congo, guarantees him, according to the constitution, to be the president of the Senate for life. Or if you're the president of Senate for life, it means that you are the most second personality in the country. If it happens that Felix Tshisekedi is dead, or anything happens to him that he's incapacitated to be the president, the Constitution allows the president of the Senate to be the president by interim. That would mean Joseph Kabila will be the president by interim. And of course, the people don't lack imagination. They say, it's quite clear Kabila will kill him, so he can still be the president. People are saying things like that. So these are part of what's happening in the Congo. There are other things might go into later, but this basically is the picture now in the Congo. What is the government will look like, and what Fayulu will do. He already said he's going to oppose this regime peacefully, and what Kabila will do. Or what Kabila's allies will do, but they have control in the parliament and the provincial parliament. They control the national and the provincial parliament, so they will use that to defend whatever they have stolen. So the status quo definitely is there for everyone to see, for anyone with some, basic grounds or capacity to analyze or objective situation. They can see status quo is there. The side of those who are around Felix Tshisekedi or around that alliance, this is made of two organizations, UDPS and UNC of Vital Kamere. They need jobs, they need access to resources, money, prestige, things like that. They will be served. It's their time to be in what is known manjoir. Manjoir is the French word is used widely in Africa today. They say people go to politics to eat. They use the word manjoir from the word manger, which means to eat in French. So it's their term. And those who were in power before them, they're holding on what they have stolen. So that status quo is quite clear there. And that's where now the party has to define a new path, because there are people who are clear also, and it doesn't matter if it's Felix or it was Kabila or it is Fayulu. They don't see any change, because if you look at the Fayulu alliance, who is in Fayulu's alliance? One, Jean-Pierre Bemba. Who is Jean-Pierre Bemba? He is a leader of a movement of liberation of Congo, a proxy organization created under the leadership of Yoweri Museveni. How can you have a future under Yoweri Museveni, who comes in the Congo as a predator, basically, to secure his own leadership and also secure his clientele, all these millionaires in Kampala who are controlling gold in the Eastern Congo and things like that. And so you have this guy, and he was in the ICC for 10 years for crimes his troop committed in Central Africa Republic. At least it gives you an indication of who the guy is. And then the other force in Fayulu's alliance is Moise Katumbi. This guy is a multimillionaire, and part of his wealth came from sales of minerals. This is national assets. The minerals Africa in the Congo, do not belong to his family or his dad and something like that. So who gave him the right to sell or to own those mines, to privatize the wealth coming from the mines? That's where he got his money from. He had other businesses, but mainly is the minerals. And they are also saying that he did support the anti-Kabila fathers forces during the rebellion that led to the assassination of Laurent Desire Kabila. That's also what people say. So Moise Katumbi is also a favorite. The West loves him. The press loves him. So you already have an indication what's going to happen if Moise Katumbi is in power. So that's the choice people have. Those from Lamuka, and Lamuka itself. I want to say Lamuka is the organization, the alliance led by Fayulu. Fayulu is a former employee of Exxon Mobil. which is a U.S. corporation. Wherever they go, you know, it's going to be looting, it's going to be corporation, it's going to be more pains for the workers and the poor peasants in that country. Just look around the world, you will see. So this is their guy. He works for years for them. So you can't dissociate the two together. You can't dissociate Fayulu and the ExxonMobil and the Tillerson, you know, the former Secretary of the United States. So that's basically what imperialism has on the ground for us. And now, the situation of Congo can't never be analyzed just by the forces who are involved in Congo itself. We know we're talking about imperialist system, international system. So you go look at that to come to a better understanding. Now, if you look at the position of like Britain, the Financial Times, the leading bourgeois newspapers, they put on the front page, you know, basically criticism of the election, a support for Fayulu, basically. Why Britain has to be in support of Fayulu? What do they have to gain in the Congo? And you go back further, what you will see that when the alliance, the Fayulu's organization called Lamuka was created, less than 2 months ago, you know, it was created in December, I think it was, or it was in November, in Geneva. Well, less than 3 months ago. Who was the chair of that meeting? Alan Dawes. Alan Dawes is a British citizen, a former leader of MONUSCO. MONUSCO is the UN military mission in the Congo. This is a British guy who presided over that meeting. And who was in that meeting? Fayulu, of course, Tshisekedi, Katumbi, Bemba, Kamere. These are the 5 leading neocolonialists, plus 2 other neocolonialists, Musito, former prime minister under Kabila, and Matungulu, who is a former director of IMF, I think in Africa or somewhere like that. So you have genuine, trusted representative of imperialism in that meeting, you know, coming to an agreement that Fayulu should be the leader against Kabila. So you have the Britain, and which says Britain often say US, and you also know that Belgium start criticizing Felix Tshisekedi. They even published in one of the leading newspapers saying that Felix Tshisekedi has a forced graduate diploma. They publish all these things. Why they will publish all these things? Because they didn't agree for Felix Tshisekedi to be an ally of Kabila. And when you look on the side of Kabila, what do you see? You see South Africa, Ramaphosa. Ramaphosa, South Africa has an interest in the Congo, mining interests. Zimbabwe has mining interest in the Congo. And China has a mining interest, and China recognizes and supports the alliance of Kabila and Tshisekedi. So it's Russia that recognizes and supports the alliance between Felix Tshisekedi and Joseph Kabila in the Congo. And it's quite, you know, you begin to see, when we know in South Africa there was a struggle between Zuma and Ramaphosa because Zuma represented the side of India, possibly China, versus the West. But in the Congo, Ramaphosa seems not to side with Belgium and England. He sides with Russia and China because South Africa has interest, and the hydroelectric dam that produces that is supposed to produce all the electricity Africa needs. The electricity produced now goes to South Africa, and you know South Africa is suffering from electricity shortage. And the Congo is a solution, and there's a project even to produce more electricity, but most of it will go to South Africa. There is that as well that represents a direct interest for South Africa. And also, to be sure, the regime that kept Joseph Kabila in power for 17 years is a result of a process known as Sun City that began in 1999 in South Africa, and which was sponsored by Thabo Mbeki, Mandela, but particularly Thabo Mbeki. You know, South Africa doesn't want Fayulu to come to power. So you have all these opposition between different powers being at play in the Congo. Of course, you go Rwanda, you go Uganda, you go Angola. They all have their own different interests, and most of their support is primarily based on what they get from Congo. So, well, obvious, Rwanda and Uganda are on the side of Felix Tshisekedi and Joseph Kabila. And Tshisekedi traveled to Uganda a month, I think, before the election to meet with Museveni. And people just, there was an uproar. Why are you going to see Museveni, who is a principal, one of the main support for Joseph Kabila? But we know why, because the deal was made already. And information came before even that the deal was struck between Joseph Kabila and Tshisekedi. And just what is the content of the deal, we don't know, but that goes back as far as 2015. So, that's some of the things I can say now. Yes, Chairman.
Yeah, I think that's really important. And, we're talking about Congo now, but you can see what we're looking at is a reflection of the kind of power relationships that exist all over the African world and all over the continent of Africa. That our people, when we don't have possession of our own revolutionary party, then we find ourselves falling victim to the interests of imperialism. And even the people in Congo, they went out and they voted for Fayulu. Fayulu himself, as you mentioned, was in bed with all kinds of imperialist powers. I think, was it Fayulu who, had worked with Tillerson's Exxon. And Tillerson was the former Secretary of State of the United States. We had Exxon responsible for the foreign policy of the United States, and now you have Exxon, who the guy who the masses wanted to be in power, the masses voted for in power, was somebody who represented Exxon, not our people. And that's the job of the African Socialist International, the African People's Socialist Party on the ground in Congo will have to make that happen. I know you mentioned, you didn't mention, but so much is happening that sometimes people may underestimate the human toll that this aggression against Africa results in. And I know we have a video clip about the mass graves that were found in Congo. Should we look at that clip? Luwezi.
At the mass grave. That's recent.
Yeah.
These are early December 2018.
Early December 2018. Can we show that video? It's not long. No, make sure, yeah. I know there was a video that had to deal with, the recent discovery of the mass graves. Oh, so you want to? We have the video of the reporter. Is that Al Jazeera? No, that's not Al Jazeera. But who were interviewing some local people on the ground. And that's Al Jazeera. So let's look at that then.
It was just as former President Joseph Kabila took office 18 years ago that Abraham Mulumba opened this roadside printing shop. He says he started the business after he couldn't find a job in a country hit by high unemployment. Now that new president Felix Tshisekedi has been sworn in, Abraham says things may be different.
I think with the new elected president, things may change, especially in the economy, so that my business can grow. But if we will have the same individual sharing the wealth of the country, I will be very disappointed.
Tshisekedi controversially won the election in December, with the results still disputed by rival Martin Fayulu. People here have long accused the government and elite of benefiting from the country's wealth, with little trickling down. This market is popular with students. It's where many take a break between classes. Moses Nawej is about to complete a degree in communication. He says he wants more opportunities for new graduates.
Our country, we are so rich because we have a lot of golds, diamonds and so on. We are so rich, but people are so poor, you see. And we don't understand what is the reason for why people must stay in poverty.
The DRC has an estimated $24 trillion worth of natural resources, including iron ore, natural gas, gold and cobalt. According to the US Geological Survey, the DRC produces more than half of the world's cobalt and more than 20% of global diamonds. Yet it remains one of the poorest countries in the world. Many have come to the capital, Kinshasa, to find work. With more than 10% of the 85 million population living here, the city is overcrowded.
Housing is expensive and hard to come by, especially for the poor. Developments like this one were meant to provide homes for them, but instead was rented out or bought up by the wealthy. Many people here say the government hasn't followed through on its promises to help the poor.
Corruption, along with insecurity and conflict, continues to hamper economic growth. 90% of the population doesn't have access to basic services.
The first challenge for the new president is infrastructure, electricity and water. He must put into action projects which will develop the country. This will increase the level of income, and through this we will reduce corruption.
Felix Tshisekedi begins his first week in office not only on a wave of optimism, but also realistic expectation. While the DRC goes through its first peaceful handover of power, the challenges remain great for the new president. Famida Miller, Al Jazeera, Kinshasa.
So, I mean, you look at what's happening in Congo, the trillions of dollars that's there, the trillions of dollars that's being looted from Congo by imperialist powers. You look at, you're talking about cobalt, which, like coltan, is an extraordinarily important, valuable mineral for conduct of electricity and use in all of the devices that are so familiar and necessary for so-called modern technology and what have you. You look at all of that and look at how our people are starving in Congo, are starving all over Africa. We're just so much flotsam to just have no value for imperialism. And when I say imperialism, that's one thing. I mean, I think it's really important to understand that the basic narrative around black people, African people, and Africa and Africans, it prevails throughout the whole white world and much of the world outside of the white world. There is an assumption that what happens with and to Africans is natural and normal. It is not. What is abnormal is to see Africans doing well. It is normal to see an impoverished, brutalized African population, and that's why revolution is absolutely necessary. And I think part of all of this, alerts us, or should alert us to the need to overthrow. All of these regimes are going to have to be overthrown. There's no way we're going to vote our way out of this situation. They're going to have to be overthrown. Africa, and that's what makes the African People's Socialist Party so crucial to forwarding the African revolution all over around the world. And that's why they had to kill Lumumba, and that's why they, Che, as Comrade Luwezi mentioned, Che Guevara was there in 1965, attempting to participate in the initiation of a continental-wide guerrilla war that would liberate the whole continent of Africa. Of course, they ultimately killed him. But this is the trajectory that we have to be on. We have to build a revolutionary capacity for Africa and African people everywhere to respond to this imposed poverty, ignorance, and humiliation. That's one of the most outstanding things that African people experience everywhere, this severe humiliation of black people as a whole. Comrade Luwezi, did you want to say something, or should we go to another video? We have about 15 minutes left.
I think, yeah, that's enough for me in terms of video.
Okay.
I know before it was free, but I think that this video is okay. I just want to pick up on Che Guevara. Street children in Congo, they call them Sheke.
I don't know if everybody understood that. The street children in Congo, they call them Sheke. From Che Guevara, That's even today, right on.
Yeah.
The street children.
Because they're poor, they sleep rough, they're homeless. And most most of them don't even know Shege is a combination of Che Guevara.
Yeah.
Because they say you live like Che Guevara.
Like Shege.
You know, they don't say you live like revolutionary
Yeah.
or be a revolutionary, but say you live like a Shege. You know, it's just interesting how bourgeoisie can turn things around if ignorance prevails. And just also on the question of resources, the way our organization has removed Africa and just the people of the world out of consciousness in terms of what we contribute against our will in not just creating capitalism, but in the maintenance of capitalism is unbelievable. I have here in front of me, people can Google that. Actually, they can see for themselves. I got this from cobaltinstitute.org. Here they have co-application of cobalt. So first one, they give you rechargeable batteries, lithium, iron.
This is cobalt. This is what cobalt is used
it's
for.
cobalt.
Like rechargeable batteries, and go ahead.
Yeah, so for those rechargeable batteries, there is something they call lithium ion and nickel metal. And if you click on that, it explains to you what they are. And then the next line, they have electronics. If you click on the electronics, they have, again, this time, rechargeable batteries, integrated circuits, which every computer needs, semiconductors, every computer needs, magnetic recording, and this also is a great scientific use. And if you go to catalyst, it's used for desulfurization. Everyone's talking about green environments, so that's what it's used. And they have recyclable plastics. They use that for that. And if you go to inks and pigments, they use that in painting and all that kind of stuff. You go to alloys, super alloys, like to make jet planes or sophisticated steel. They combine different elements and to increase the resistance to make those steel wear resistance alloys or prosthetic alloys, magnetic alloys, hard metal. It's used in healthcare, and if you click on healthcare, it gives you all use in terms of healthcare. It's used to sterilize medical and dental equipment before use. 60 applications just in medicine. It's huge. Cobalt is huge. So, it's of great strategic significance. And I want people to understand that all the countries in the world combined, they don't even produce half of what Congo has, not even a third of what Congo possesses in terms of strategic reserve. Congo has 66, something like that, or to 70%, so the capitalists say. But if you go where cobalt is produced, you go like at least 40,000 children under age 3 years old. It might sound surreal to many people, but you've got 3 years old African boys and girls in the mines. You've got all these underage children. They go there early in the morning and they don't even have a room to sleep on. They don't even sleep on the bed. They sleep on the ground. They don't go to schools. 70% of children in Congo don't go to school anymore. And you begin to compare this to, because I'm taking this example because they said Felix Tshisekedi win the elections, Fayulu won. Now they go to Venezuela. Someone who was not even a candidate in a presidential election, they say he's the president.
Yeah.
Now, Venezuela has a population of 20 million people, but the national budget is $117 billion. $117 billion for 29 million people. And you go to Congo, over 70 million people, sometimes they say 80 million people, but the budget is at $5 billion. Yes, you heard me, people. The budget is $5 billion for a population for over 80 million people. And Chavez, for 10 years, Chavez government spent something like $772 billion. $772 billion. And if you go to Congo in 10 years, what? Well, I said they spend on social, housing, healthcare, things like that. Congo in 10 years didn't even spend $10 billion on the people, not even that. And if you begin to see the magnitude of not just suffering of the people, but of not just the hypocrisy of intent of imperialism to attack any government that is anti-colonial and represent the future for the people. And it gives us promises and lies around governments that works for them. Like the Congolese government works for imperialists. That's why they can criticize Felix for not winning elections, but they will not criticize him the way they criticize Maduro. They don't even call Felix a cheat. They don't. Yeah. They just say from statistics we have, it seems that he win election. Things like that. Yeah. So we should be clear who our enemy is, and we should be clear who represents the interests of the people. That's why we should support the resistance of the government of Venezuela against imperialists, and be clear and expose Felix Tshisekedi and Fayulu, all these representatives of imperialist interests in the Congo. I think that's really important for us to understand. Yes, sir.
Oh, thank you. I think that's right on, comrade. And I also think it's also important in terms of just philosophy and how people understand the world, our worldview. Because what happens too often, as is happening in Congo, as happens in the United States, we get an opportunity to vote or not for servants of imperialism. The Africans, there was a Barack Hussein Obama, and Africans were thrilled to be able to go out and vote for this guy who was a lick spittle, a real servant of imperialism, unlike most of who preceded him and who presided over an escalation of the war in Africa with AFRICOM and participated in murdering people who wanted to change things for Africa and African people. Today, we have an opportunity, the people have an opportunity to vote or not for somebody like Cory Booker, who is representative of the Democratic Party, and then this other woman, Kamala Harris, a representative of the Democratic Party. None of them represent African people. And if people don't have the best understanding, we end up giving popular support for people who actually work against our best interests. That's why this whole question of a theoretical grounding, what kind of theoretical theory, worldview that the political activity of anybody is tethered to. And that's why this whole issue of African internationalism and building the African People's Socialist Party in Congo and every place else, and calling on our people in Congo to reject this setup. I mean, there is not going to be any elected revolutionary force in the Congo. I mean, the time when something came close to that was when Patrice Lumumba was elected, and he had the audacity to chastise the Belgians for the horrors that they had imposed on Congo. He had the audacity to work with people like Kwame Nkrumah and to even think about trying to have some kind of relationship with what was then the Soviet Union and the United States and other imperialist forces. The whole United Nations, they all ganged up on him. And he was isolated because there was no African internationalist organization. There was no African internationalism. And they murdered and butchered him. And it wasn't just to kill Lumumba, it was to destroy the ideas that Lumumba represented and also the potential for African people to acquire control of our own resources and our own lives. And of course, another weakness that we saw was that in terms of Lumumba, it was Lumumba who appointed Joseph Mobutu as head of the army that was supposed to be in the post-colonial Congo. And so here you have somebody in his own organization in the form of Mobutu who works with the CIA, clearly worked with Kennedy and with Eisenhower, Eisenhower, the outgoing president, and Kennedy was the incoming president, and the CIA and other forces who gave him tons and tons of monies and and prestige and what have you, and he participated in overthrowing Lumumba. He participated in capturing Lumumba and the actual butchering, literally. I don't mean this in, I mean, this is a literal butchering of Lumumba in order to maintain the status quo of our oppression and exploitation. That's part of what we're looking at in Congo today, and everything that we see in Congo today, every one of these elections rest upon that foundation. It's the system that was set up to further distance the people from what Lumumba tried to bring to us in Congo. And that's what our task is, not just to report on this, but to report on it so that people can be informed. We have to make a revolution. We're going to have to overturn that whole social system, and we're going to have to really attack and destroy the illusions that our people have, the African workers and impoverished people. I mean, just the humiliation, when I say humiliation, I'm talking about to have our children, 3-year-old children working in the mines to bring up ore and what have you, so that white people and imperialist forces all around the world can enjoy the resources at our expense. This has to end. And it's not going to end by participating with the system. It's going to end by overthrowing the system. And that's what our task, that's the task that's before us. So, Comrade Luwezi, we have a couple more minutes. I just want to say that we'll be back again. We're going to be doing this weekly, at least weekly, and sometimes more frequently with Uhuru Congo. But Comrade Luwezi, is there more you should say? Certainly people should know how to get in touch with you. And what else is there that you need to say within the next 2 minutes? Uhuru.
Yeah, I just want to say, since they have so-called a new government, and people need to remember UDPS, the security organization, and as the whole African bourgeoisie in Africa, starting from the ANC, they are known as people who profess to the people non-violence. They are pacifist opposition to imperialism. And that was that was UDPS. But now they're in power. You know what? The students, they said, you always fought for the rule of law. So we want access to clean water. Remember, under colonialism and the early years of neo-colonialism in the Congo, universities in the Congo were high standards. And now the students don't have access to clean water at the university. So they demonstrated asking for clean water, and also asking for the removal of the new study fees. So because they increased the fees for the students. They say remove those fees and we want clean water. And the response was what? Shooting students. 4 students have been killed. Since Felix has been president. So what Felix did to confuse the whole situation, he asked for the commander to be arrested. But we know he has no army. He has to depend on a new colonial army to be in power. He needs a new colonial army to suppress the people. So he cannot go about disciplining the armies. So we're watching what's going to happen about. We have no illusion about that. The point was that there is no such thing as peaceful neo-colonial state, or just peaceful state, peaceful bourgeois state. It doesn't exist. It is a lie. So the UDPS and the Sekedi, they're being exposed for what they've been, for the lies they've been professing for years. And if there is anything, we say basically take away of that pacifism. It's going to be a bloody struggle to overthrow neo-colonialism. There will be no peaceful revolution anyway. No. There has never been a peaceful revolution against imperialism, against the workers. It doesn't exist. So that definitely is one of the lessons people are learning now, that this speech on the peaceful stuff is just BS. So I think it increasingly is going to be obvious to everyone. And the last thing I want to say is just people need to know it's a shaky situation in the Congo, in the sense that only one president in Africa attended the inauguration of Felix Tshisekedi. That was Uhuru Kenyatta. And he's a former Raila Odinga, who's supposed to be his opponent. They all get on very well. They both attended the inauguration. No other president came. Nobody. And these it doesn't look good. So we're going to see how things going to develop. But it sends some signal that something's not right.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that's what people.
How do people get in touch with you, Comrade Luwezi? We got to make this revolution in Congo.
Yeah, they should keep in touch with us. They should write to us to Patrice Lumumba Coalition.
Patrice Lumumba
Coalition at yahoo.co.uk. That's both supposed to be the best way. And we do, if they speak in Lingala, we do a program in Lingala that comes on every Friday at 4 o'clock at the Congo Centers. It's also on Facebook, it's also on YouTube. Congo Centers, you say Congo Centers in English here. They should see us there. But also they should come to general meeting done by the Uhuru movement. Our next meeting is on 21st February at 7 p.m. at 33 Brixton Roads. So we're going to show even a PowerPoint presentation on the African martyrs, and a section of it will be the African martyrs in the Congo. So they will learn something there, and that's where they can come and join the movement there.
And that's going to be in London, right? That's in London and Brixton Road?
Yeah. Yes. And if they love traveling, we'll be in Paris on the 23rd. The African martyrs in Paris too.
On 23rd.
That will be, I don't have the address in front of me, but our next show, we're going to share the address with our listeners.
Can any of the contact information that Comrade Luwezi just mentioned, can any of that contact information be put up on the channel someplace so that people can assess it? Okay, we'll do that then. Comrade Luwezi, I want to really thank you for what it is that you bring to this discussion, and I want to thank the brothers and sisters and comrades who tune in to Uhuru Congo. We think that this has to be made an extraordinarily popular show because, again, our people are faced with hell in Congo and all over Africa, but we don't have access to the information, and that's the thing that we're trying to do now, is to make that information accessible so that it can be used to help us to organize and defend Africa, defend our people in Africa, and to build the African revolution from Congo, from Kinshasa in Congo to St. Petersburg, Florida in the U.S. The thing is that the African revolution has to be built, has to be promoted, has to be developed. And of course, the African Socialist International, known as the African People's Socialist Party in the various countries that we are located in, is the necessary vehicle to forward the revolution for our people. So I want to thank everybody for coming in. Thank Comrade Secretary General Luwezi Kinshasa for bringing what he brings to this discussion, Uhuru.